And by the way, I won't take any lessons on patriotism from Mark Carney, who took jobs and money out of Canada to put them in the States, in China, and in the Middle East. I won't take any lessons from the Liberals on patriotism after they have been lowering our flag and putting down our history for the last 10 years. Conservatives will put Canada first, and that means fixing what Liberals broke.
Ladies and gentlemen, what a game that was last night. And listening to Pierre Poilievre talk about patriotism there, I have to play you this clip because when I watched it live, it just put a smile on my face and gave me a good chuckle. Take a look.
Marner. McDavid alone in front. Scores! Scores! He scores! Connor McDavid! Connor McDavid ends it in overtime! Connor McDavid alone in front! Connor McDavid alone in front! Connor McDavid! Canada wins it in overtime! In the United States, you will never have this country, and you will never have that trophy.
Now that is a reaction from a man who loves the game and loves our country. But congratulations again to the boys in red. They played an amazing game, especially Binnington. That man put in so much work in overtime, saved so many potential goals. So congratulations to them all. But with that being said, today we got a bit of a mishmash of news coming from around Canada. And first we're going to start off with PEI, as Dennis King, the Premier, as of 1 p.m. today, is calling it quits. They already have an interim leader that they're going to be stepping in, Rob Lance. And Dennis King he said he's done. He's not going to be running for anything else. I think he said after 6-7 years, he's just kind of done. He wants to spend time with his family, his wife. He sacrificed enough. And when he was on the CBC in PEI, I actually like their CBC. They seem a little bit more personable. But take a look at this.
Premier Dennis King is beside me, just said, "Are we live?" I said, "Yes, Premier, we're live." So here he is. Premier Dennis King, wow. At least until 1 p.m. You said noon, but it's 1. According to the press release, it's 1. Which is it?
Well, I would go with the press release because they will be paying much more attention to when I resign tomorrow than I will. But
what happens? What do you do when you resign? Do you have to sign something? Do you have to give Rob Lance the keys to something?
I don't know if it's that formal. I'll probably do what other premiers have done. I'll probably go back to my office and write him a little note and leave it in the desk and wish him well and then stay out of his way. That'll be what I would think is the best thing I could do for Rob, but he'll do a great job. Premier Lance will take this on and do an amazing job, and I couldn't be any more proud of him.
So all the best to Dennis King, whatever he does in the future. But if I do have any viewers from PEI, let me know what you think about this whole situation. Are you sad that he's leaving? Are you happy that he's leaving? How did he do as a premier? Because it's nice to hear. All I have to go off of is Dougie Ford here in Ontario, and he's a very hit or miss most of the time. But now moving on, in BC, there was some big news that came out saying that they are now moving away from the unsupervised drug policy and are going to be implementing a supervised one because of the diversion that keeps happening. And they made this announcement yesterday. Take a look.
Well, after almost 2 years of downplaying the issue, the BC government today changed its Safe Supply drug program to prevent the resale of prescription opioids on the street and into the hands of organized crime. For more on this story, let's bring in Rob Shaw at the BC Legislature. Rob, what has changed?
Well, April, the government yielding to criticism on the diversion of Safe Supply pills, changing the program so that people must use any opioids they get from the government in front of a healthcare professional. It's called Witnessed Safe Supply. It's a big change from BC's Unwitnessed Safe Supply program, which was the first of its kind in Canada, where people could take prescription opioids home for use if they were suffering addictions. New Health Minister Josie Osborne said an internal investigation, which was leaked earlier this month, has convinced her to change.
I recognize that this is a difficult change for some, and that we have a lot of work to do with clinicians and with care providers to ensure that clients can transition into a witnessing-only model.
I am grateful to see that this action has been taken today, but I am disappointed to see that it took this long to see that the minister and this government only admitting now and saying, oh, now they've heard anecdotes. They have heard from doctors. They have heard from parents and families for years who have been begging them to take this action.
This change from the government coming just an hour before the NDP was set to be grilled in the legislature on the issue in the first question period since the election. That did not prevent the questions, though, with the huge new 44-person BC Conservative caucus making this the top topic for question period, taking it straight to Premier David Eby over his denial and deflection of the problem for some time. Here's a bit of that exchange.
Will the Premier stop gaslighting the public? Will he admit his government has been misleading the public on this? And will he enact a public inquiry into the safe supply scandal?
Now the Health Minister has made an important but difficult announcement to move to an exclusively witnessed program, which we know is going to make it harder for some people to access this program that we know could save lives, but which we have to do to address the issue of diversion.
Now, I have seen a few arguments from people saying, well, this is just going to increase the amount of people that are going to the illegal stuff now because they don't want to be taking it in front of somebody and being supervised. But to me, if they're not willing to even just take it supervised when they're getting it for free, then they most likely were taking it and selling it anyways. So in my opinion, you're kind of weeding out the ones that are causing the problem of the diversion if they don't want to do it in front of somebody. How they're going to manage doing it, having everybody come in and do it in front of them all the time, I'm not sure, but it's a step in the right direction, at least in my opinion. But next, I want to touch a little bit on the Liberal leadership race, because a story from the Globe and Mail came out the other day about Ruby Dalla being kind of targeted by some Liberals, in particular with foreign interference. Now, she was on CPAC. They had an interview with her. The quality is not great. Either it was her end where the connection was really choppy, or it was on CPAC's because their quality tends to not be great. But just take a little look at this interview here.
But first to the Liberal leadership race and former Liberal MP Ruby Dalla. This morning, the Globe and Mail publishing a story about Ms. Dalla's campaign, citing unnamed Liberal sources that claim the party had sent the leadership hopeful a list of questions. The sources reportedly said the questions raised concerns about possible foreign interference and campaign irregularities. Now, later in the day, the Liberal Party denied their party's questions had anything to do with foreign interference from India. And now, to address the questions herself is Ruby Dalla. Ms. Dalla, thank you for taking the time and joining us.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
So, as I said, the party says its questions had nothing to do with foreign interference. So I was wondering if you might clarify then what the questions were that was being asked of you.
It's internal party matters, so I cannot comment, but they did put forward a set of questions. We have given all of the requested information along with all of the supporting documentation that they requested. I was very shocked to read in the Globe this morning that there are these sources within the Liberal Party talking about foreign interference, and I can categorically say that it is completely false. It is unacceptable. I was born and raised here in Canada. I am running for the leadership of the Liberal Party of Canada and as Canada's next Prime Minister, and to insinuate because I am of Indian origin, because I am a woman of color from a multicultural community in Canada, to paint me with a brush of foreign interference as I'm running for one of the top leadership jobs of our country, it's simply unacceptable.
Now, later in the interview, Ruby Dalla mentions that the Globe and Mail actually put out a correction after talking to a Liberal official. And here we can see the original article that came out. Liberal Party questions leadership candidate Ruby Dalla over possible interference from India. The sources say that some of the questions involve possible foreign interference in her leadership campaign from the Indian government of Prime Minister Modi. Now, as mentioned, 4 hours ago, this got updated. The title is a little bit different. It's not over possible interference. Now it says over whether questions about the campaign are related to foreign interference. And down here it says the Globe is not identifying the sources who were not authorized to discuss the internal party member matters. In a statement Thursday, a Liberal Party spokesman, Parker Lund, said that the party has not identified concerns about foreign meddling. He said that although the party does not comment on internal reviews, it can confirm that none of the questions put to Ms. Dalla's campaign relate to interference by a foreign government. So a little bit of mixed messages. Maybe the Globe and Mail got ahead of the game, or maybe they just had to backpedal, the Liberals at least, because who knows? The Liberals are just in shambles, it seems like. Now, before we get into the interview with Pierre on CP24, I do want to play another segment from CPAC where a Liberal panelist was talking about Pierre and Carney, and the thing she was saying just blew my mind. Take a look.
Okay, so listen, you have now Pierre Poilievre making these comments, and really these are the types of words you usually hear once a leader is chosen. But he's launching this, I guess, attack campaign against Mr. Carney even before Liberals vote. What does that tell you about how worried Conservatives are right now about Mark Carney potentially winning the Liberal race?
Well, it tells me they're very worried. We're seeing polling trends. The important poll is the Election Day poll, but we've seen a massive drop in Conservative support, a big uptick in Liberal support, particularly when the question is posed with Mr. Carney as the leader. And what Mr. Poilievre is very worried about is that Mark Carney is known as an economist, former governor of the Bank of Canada, former governor of the Bank of England, someone who's been an official at finance, who knows how economies work, who's participated in the global economy. And Mr. Poilievre doesn't stack up from his experience in that perspective. And Mr. Carney is pulling the people away from the Conservatives, the more moderate folks, the people who were definitely done with Prime Minister Trudeau and done with the Liberals as a result, but hadn't fully made up their minds. Now they have something to focus on, someone they can trust, an adult in the room. And it goes to, is the ballot question going to be about who can best manage Trump and the economy? And that's the biggest concern for Mr. Poilievre, because that's where he doesn't stack up against Mr. Carney, and that's why he's going after him.
Now, it is clear that this lady has been drinking too much of that Liberal Kool-Aid, but she also has some severe Pierre derangement syndrome, because the thing she's saying about Carney and Pierre makes me realize she actually doesn't even know anything about Carney or Pierre. Just because Pierre is not a banker doesn't mean he doesn't know how to balance a budget, he doesn't know economics, he doesn't know finance. The guy worked as a shadow minister for finance for a very long time. He was in Treasury. I think he knows numbers, at least. I think he knows what to do with the numbers. But then she just fabricates some story about the recent rally that Pierre had, having only 500 people there when the room was booked. There was people outside of the venue as well. And the Conservative guy beside her, he actually corrected her, saying, no, it was actually 2,000 people. I was there. But she also said that Carney's been drawing in more people at his rallies. Have you seen his rallies? It's like 50 to 70, maybe 100, 150 people. These are such small rooms that he's been doing. How is she saying that he's pulling in more than 500 people? And then she goes on to talk about how this is what Canada needs. We need Carney, not Pierre. Because apparently two things can't be true at once. He can't say that Canada is broken, but also that he loves Canada, when clearly that is possible.
Mr. Poilievre doesn't like to admit that he's wrong, and he would have to step away from all the footage where he's been Captain Canada is broken. That's what he's been telling people for 2 years, and he's got to try to pivot. And that was about that fully staged rally. Only about 500 people, by the way. Mr. Carney's been drawing more than that.
Yeah,
but he's...
I was there.
You were there, okay. Yeah. Mr. Poilievre has a lot of Axe the Tax t-shirts, so he's got to get some mileage out of that. But he's trying to pivot from Canada is broken to maybe something else, because Mr. Carney has been associated with building budgets. But Poilievre is going to have a hard time sticking things on Mark Carney. And the worse Mr. Trump behaves, and the more nervous that Canadians get about the country and what Mr. Trump is going to do to our economy with tariffs, the worse it is for Pierre Poilievre. And the more people will be looking to what the alternatives are. As I said, you can't go from saying for 2 years Canada's broken to I'm Captain Canada now. It doesn't work. Canadians aren't foolish. Mr. Poilievre thinks by putting on a red tie and standing in front of a Canadian flag, people are going to believe he's Captain Canada. He's going to have to do more than that. Mr. Carney has not been tested on a political stage, but he's been tested as governor of the bank, multiple central banks, with tough questions in tough economic times. He's an economist. Right at this point in time in Canada, that's what we need. We need someone smart, someone serious, someone experienced who can handle the economy domestically, internationally, and set the country on the right path.
Now, Carney being all those things does not make him qualified for the position. We already know about his shady past. We can guess what his shady future is going to be. But we even have the former Prime Minister of England coming out and talking about how much Carney screwed up their economy. And just the fact alone that he is now going against all of the Liberal policies and just repeating conservative talking points about cutting this and cutting that indicates that Pierre is the right guy for the job. He was already going in the right direction, and now Carney is just copying everything he's saying. And so I don't think this is Pierre by any means being a Captain Canada. He's just sticking to his guns like he always has, and this is actually what he talked about when he was on CP24. Take a look.
For months, you've said that Canada is broken. Now, in the wake of the tariff threats, of the threat of becoming the 51st state, do you still think that Canada is broken?
I think the Liberals have broken everything. They broke our housing market by doubling housing costs. They broke in the household budgets by raising carbon taxes and income taxes, with twice as many people lined up at food banks as there were before the Trudeau-Carney Liberals. They've broken our criminal justice system with catch and release that has allowed criminals to rampage through our streets.
But they'll try to get Pat King on 10 years in jail for the trucker convoy. Make that make sense.
Gun crime having doubled. They've broken families with the fentanyl crisis that they unleashed by legalizing hard drugs and leaving our borders open. We have more people dead of fentanyl after a decade of the Liberals than died fighting for Canada in the Second World War. So they broke a lot of things, and it is patriotic to point out what is broken so that you can fix it. I mean, Liberals they're trying to gaslight Canadians into saying, if you point out any of the problems that they caused after 10 years in power, you're unpatriotic. I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way. Patriotism is about having an honest conversation about the enormous damage the Liberals did to this country. And by the way, I won't take any lessons on patriotism from Mark Carney, who took jobs and money out of Canada to put them in the States, in China, and in the Middle East. I won't take any lessons from the Liberals on patriotism after they have been lowering our flag and putting down our history for the last 10 years. Conservatives will put Canada first, and that means fixing what Liberals broke.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like somebody who's not ready for the job. My goodness. But as we move to the last question from this reporter, she talks about the relationship that Pierre has with Doug Ford, seeing as Ontario is currently doing its election. And he actually gives a pretty good answer and a little bit of insight into what his potential future goals are in terms of housing. Take a listen.
We are a week away from our own election here in Ontario, where we choose our new premier, and it shows that Doug Ford, leader of the Progressive Conservatives, has a healthy lead. What's your working relationship like with him?
Well, my working relationship is great with all the premiers. I'll work with anybody who will put Canada first, anyone of any party who's prepared to work together, for example, to take taxes off home building. I'm going to go to all the premiers and say, look, I'm going to take the GST off new homes. Will you take your provincial sales tax off those homes? That would save over $100,000 for a young family trying to buy a home. Then let's pressure the municipalities, cut their home building taxes. I'll say to them, look, let's knock down interprovincial trade barriers. I'll give you a bonus every time you remove a barrier to interprovincial trade so that we can start trading between Canadians rather than giving all our goods to the Americans. I'll work with anybody on my plan to bring in a blue seal, for example, a blue seal for immigrant doctors and nurses that is recognized across Canada so that the doctors that are driving taxis in Canada can actually take a test, prove they're qualified, and get licensed anywhere in the country. So no matter who Ontarians choose or other provinces choose as their premier, I'll always work with that person to put our country first.
Obviously, that's great to hear that he's open and willing to work with the other premiers, especially when it comes to the intra-provincial trade, which is something we want to get going. but also just a little bit more on the policy in terms of housing coming from so-called Captain Canada, which is a much more flattering name than Carbon Tax Carney, that's for sure. With all that being said, if you guys have made it this far into the video, let me know in the comment section below what you thought about all this. Maybe leave a beaver, Canadian flag, maple leaf, anything that you can come up with to let me know that you got here. And as always, hope you enjoy your weekend, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Thanks so much.